absolutely agree with you. In fact, I'm making a film about how the establishment is trying to... Well, I'll explain it when we get back. We have, of course, the lead singer of the band Clutch, Neil Fallon.
How would you feel with normal blood pressure? How would you...
It's a reliable source of information. 50,000 unstoppable watts. Anthrax and radio and liquor.
Neil Fallon, frontman for Clutch, is our guest for the rest of the hour. I haven't asked him yet if he thinks we ought to take some phone calls coming up. Hell, we will. 800-259-9231. Just questions for Clutch, ladies and gentlemen. Neil, we were talking during the break. What has your evolution in awakening to the whole world government structure been like? When did you first start to question the nature of reality we live in? And you were telling me you went through a process of really being paranoid and freaked out, but now that you're not. Explain that to us.
Well, I think growing up, I live in Maryland, but for all intents and purposes, it's a Washington, D.C. suburb. So it's in my face every day. Air Force One, I see it once a week. Marine One flies over my house. I see signs for the CIA, the NSA. They're building a huge complex out in College Park called Avatar. And I think it really got to me, in my 20s, and I felt, we're screwed. There's nothing we can do. Wringing your hands, kind of a Chicken Little psychology. And then I don't know exactly if there was a kind of a threshold moment or an epiphany, but I'm reading an awesome book right now called Politics and the Occult, and it's by the guitar player or former guitar player of Blondie, Gary Lackman. And it's a real fascinating look into the occult in politics. And there's a quote at the top of the book that I think kind of explains that. And it's nothing could be more dangerous for the human race than to believe that its affairs had fallen into the hands of supermen. And for me, that is the realization that as powerful as someone may be, their blood runs red, and their breath stinks too. And I think it's much healthier to live with that in your mind than to think there's nothing you can do and we're damned. That's a very dark place to go. And I'm not going to live that way. I'm not going to have someone tell me that the world is going to go up in flames on a certain date, because first of all, there's no way you could know that, because you're telling me you're God, because you can predict the future. And if that's the case, well, fix everyone's problems right now. I mean, I know I'm kind of rambling, but I get a little bit up.
No, you're not. In fact, we didn't do a pre-interview, and it's funny that you brought up the exact same things that are in my mind and at my core, and that's what I try to teach people, is that we all have incredible individual power. And I think instead of saying the world isn't run by supermen, I think the answer is we are all supermen and women. Like Gandhi said, the potential of the human species itself, and the elite know that they have to teach us that we're powerless because we actually have so much power. They're actually individuals who have realized how much power this species has and are scared that we will realize that potential and will actually contend for designing the reality we live in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they try to prop themselves up with things like Bohemian Grove to instill a sense of mystery, because if it seems mysterious and spooky, then people are going to believe that you're mysterious and spooky. But, Walter Cronkite's voice coming out of a big plastic owl to me is kind of laughable. And like going back to what I said, I'm no expert on any of this. It's a huge topic with a lot of gray areas. That there's a lot of raw materials for songs, and when you listen to a song, you have your own subjective input into it, and I think that's the fun part. I'd rather cheer people on than beat them down.
What about Escape from the Prison Planet? That song came out, 95, 96?
Yeah, that was our self-titled record was sort of a big changing point for the band, both musically and lyrically. And I'd started reading a lot about, at that point, UFO community, conspiracy theories, and whatnot. So the lyrics are almost like a list of things that I was reading. I remember back then, before the internet was really the entity that it is now, there was these books written by, his name was Valerian. They're called The Matrix, and they were kind of like a compendium of the most bizarre conspiracy theories and just esoteric thought. And spent a lot of time in the back of the van poring over those things, and I think that kind of worked its way into the song there.
We're going to come back with Escape from the Prison Planet. On the other side, it's Clutch frontman Neil Fallon. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the other side. Long segment coming up. Neil Fallon's our guest, frontman for Clutch. Neil, what's the best website for listeners to go check out all things Clutch?
The main one you want to go to is prorock.com. That's PRO-ROCK.com. We have another website, Weathermaker Music, but that's our own record labels, which will just probably bump you to Pro Rock. So information, message board, all the links are centralized on that.
That's pro-rock.com?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We were talking again during the break. That's some of the best radios, our discussions behind the scenes. Getting into the occult, you talk about it being voodoo. Voodoo is just a big mind game, a scam, making the poor Haitians believe that, the politicians can make them die if they don't do what they say, just with, some gunpowder thrown in a fire. And you were talking about a book that you've been reading about the occult in politics. This is an occult empire. Give us your take on that.
Well, if there is magic in the world, I think it's language. You can hypnotize people with language. And Clutch, we're not a platinum band, we're not a gold record band, but we've had some pretty big shows, and there have been moments on stage where I really felt, whether it's real or imagined, that I had 10,000 people in the palm of my hand, and it's the most powerful drug you can imagine. And I can understand how people get addicted to that, whether it be politicians or musicians. And I think that whether it's, I think maybe that explains why some musicians get addicted to drugs, because they want to maintain that high all the time. But politicians never get off stage. They're always on it. And I think the occult, it draws its power from the power of the human mind. And I think a lot of these politicians try to imbue or appear as if they are larger than life, either in their own mind or for our own benefit or not benefit, if you want to look at it that way, with these things that are hard to understand. But you go down to Washington, D.C., and it's a pretty imposing place. They're temples to mortal men, basically. But again, I'm rambling, and I forgot your initial.
No, we were talking about the occult. That's a great answer. I'm actually really impressed. It's thought-provoking, the different points you're bringing up. What does concern you most about this New World Order structure? You brought up during the break privatization.
What scares me is if people, at the end of the day, the government is ours. Everyone that's elected is a public servant, and they need to be reminded that over and over and over again. They're like dogs. If you let them up on the couch, they're going to keep coming up on the couch. You got to remind them, we pay their wages. But if we start being so scared of being out of control, and we said, well, maybe it's best that companies take care of everything, all you've really done is you played a shell game. It's a 3-card Monte. What really scares me is the privatization of prisons, of police forces, because then they don't have to answer to us because they're their own entity, and that's capitalism gone awry.
What'd you think? It's piracy. What'd you think of the Hardin, Montana situation?
I've been trying to find out what's happened since. It's that story, at least from my own kind of half-baked research, has kind of gone under the radar, and it's hard to find out what the repercussions were.
Let me give you the skinny